of WAEC. And then we have Justin Ibas appoints administrators for 23 local governments. And then we have Plateau killings, genocidal sponsored Mufwang. And then Trump's 14% tariff threatens 323.96 billion naira Nigerian non-oil exports to US. And then NNPC crude suspension to Dangote refinery affected OPEC output. And then we also have US criticizes Nigeria's import ban on agricultural and pharmaceutical goods. All right, let's look at the details of this particular headline. It says 11 PDP governors urges Supreme Court to halt Rivers emergency rule. A total of 11 governors of the People's Democratic Party have approached the Supreme Court challenging what powers President Bola Tinubu has to suspend a democratically elected structure of a state. The suit filed by the governors also challenges the declaration of the state of emergency rule in Rivers State. And then it says, while the media previously reported that the suit had been filed before the Supreme Court, the governor's suit was actually filed before the Apex Court on Tuesday. And this particular conversation, President Tinubu on March 18 declared a state of emergency in Rivers and suspended Fubara, the state deputy governor, and all elected members of Rivers State for an initial 6 months. And following the suspension, President Tinubu appointed Vice Admiral Ibok Ete Ibas as the sole administrator to oversee the affairs of Rivers State pending the period of the suspension. All right, and then we have this conversation that says U.S. criticizes Nigeria's import ban on agriculture and pharmaceutical goods. Of course, we had the increase in the tariff by Trump, and where he increased 14%. And now, not just has he increased 14%, he has also banned certain things from being imported. The United States Trade Representatives on Monday criticized Nigeria's import ban on 25 categories of goods, claiming that the restrictions limit market access for American exporters. This came shortly after President Donald Trump introduced tariffs on goods entering the US, with Nigeria facing a 14% duty. The USTR highlighted the impact of Nigeria's import ban on various sectors, particularly agriculture, pharmaceuticals, beverage, and consumer goods. The restriction affect items such as beef, pork, poultry, fruit juices, medicaments, and alcoholic beverage, which the US sees as significant barriers to trade. And the agency argues that these limitations reduce export opportunities for US businesses and lead to loss of revenue. Nigerians' import ban on 25 different product categories impacts US exporters, particularly in agriculture, pharmaceuticals, beverages, and consumer goods. All right. Let's look at another. NNPC crude suspension to Dangote refinery affected OPEC output. This is a report. This is a report coming in the aspect of business. The decision of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited to suspend crude supply to Dangote and other refineries affected the output of the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries in March, and a Reuters survey found that OPEC oil output fell in March as Nigeria curbed deliveries to domestic refineries. And in March, supply from Nigeria, Iran, and Venezuela fell by 50,000 BPD each, and the survey found that Nigerian supply was said to have declined due to reduced deliveries to Dangote refinery, offsetting higher exports. Reuters stated that Nigeria is pumping slightly above its OPEC quota. All right, you can be a part of the conversation this morning by calling, texting, or sending a WhatsApp message to the number 0808 312 8618. 0808 312 8618. Or you can watch us and drop your comment live on YouTube to the handle VOP916 Abuja. VOP916 Abuja. And we are live on YouTube. And of course, you can watch, join, and be a part of the conversation. Let your voice be heard. That is the most important factor. Tariff war, US slams Nigeria over import ban on 25 items. And then tread softly, perish your presidential ambitions. APC cautions Atiku and Rufai. Of course, Rufai recently moved to SDP, and of course there has been speculation that he is hoping to come out in 2027 to vie for the office of the president. And the APC right now is coming out to say, tread softly, perish your presidential ambition. APC cautions Atiku and Rufai. And the National Vice Chairman Northwest of the All Progressive Congress APC, Garba Mohammed, has cautioned former Vice President Atiku Abubakar and ex-governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai, to tread softly ahead of the 2027 general election. And then Mohammed, who hails from Kaduna State and served as a member of the House of Representatives representing Sabongari Federal Constituency for 16 years, had in an open letter told Atiku to perish the thought of another presidential contest and remain the statesman he was, noting that he had been contesting for presidency since 1993. And Mohammed said, as we approach the next general election, you are at it again. This time around, having sensed your party, the PDP, may not cede the presidential ticket to you, you are now considering joining forces with some aggrieved politicians to form a coalition to challenge President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in 2027. And then he said, for you, Alhaji Atiku, our former vice president, my free-hearted advice is, in your best interest and in the interest of Nigerians, it is better you drop the idea of contesting for president in 2027, by which time you would have already turned 80 years. Okay. that was straight, like very, very, very straight. Like, it's just telling him, okay, just rest. But we're hoping that in 2027 we're able to see, yes, we've given opportunities to younger people, and well, in some places of power, and we have seen how they have responded. And it's just like, oh, allow the young people, allow them to do their thing, allow them to express themselves. So you said we're the leaders of tomorrow, and now giving the opportunity for them to do what they have. Some of the younger people have done, you see, from occupying school and then demolition, confusion as government agents shut a Banana Island gate, and then inclusive tech ecosystem, white tech industry leaders must integrate people living with disabilities, and then 3 dead, many injured as Delta communities clash over land ownership. And then ex-Abia governor Orji denies fraud allegation and demands apology. And then insecurity, Igbe Alegamo residents protest over killings and kidnappings in Lagos. And then this, when it comes to the issue of insecurity, these are conversations that would really want to have, because the high rise in the case of insecurity is on the high side of things, and it is very concerning. And we just hope that for some reason the case of insecurity in Nigeria become a thing of the past, because right now there is a lot going on. It's affecting a lot of things, and people don't even want to go to certain places because they feel they are not protected. And these are things that we should properly look into. The security operatives should take more responsibility, and of course, as a citizen, you also have the responsibility to see, if you see something, you say something, because that is very important. And then we have presidency knocks Ndume over loop-sided appointment claim. Senator Ali Ndume and Senator Ali Ndumi's allegation of lopsidedness in appointments under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is not only hypocritical but misleading, the presidency said yesterday. And of course, Special Advisor to the President on Information and Strategy, Mr. Bayo Ononuga, accused the Borno South Senator of being allergic to facts and addicted to theatrics. And then Ononuga dismissed Ndumi's lopsidedness in appointment claim in reaction posted via his verified X handle on of course formerly known as Twitter. All right, you can be like I said earlier in the show, you can be a part of the conversation by calling, texting, or sending a WhatsApp message to the number 0808 312 8618 is the number for you to call this morning and be a part of the conversation. Or you can join us live on YouTube at VOP 961 Abuja. YouTube is VOP 961 Abuja. And of course, like I said, Rufai Oseni will be joining us at 7:30 to give us most of the highlights of stories making the rounds this morning. Nigeria can become global economic growth driver, says World Bank. And then police partner Interpol on regional security and data sharing. How Nigeria will cushion Trump's tariffs. This is coming from the minister. And then we'll also have AFDB, federal government begin 538 million. Some initiatives have improved PCC's fortune, says Chief Commissioner Abubakar. And we have other headlines making the rounds this morning, but of course you are the major factor. Stories making the rounds around you is the conversation we should be having this morning, and you can join in calling, texting, or sending a WhatsApp message to 0808 312 8618. And of course, the presidency has dismissed allegation of lopsided appointment under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, describing the claim of Senator Ali Ndumi. The Nigerian Meteorological Agency, NIMET, has predicted 3 days of more Edo, Bayelsa, Delta, and Ogun. The rainfall is anticipated between Wednesday 9 went around you is kept clean and you are not obstructing any waterway. That is very important, and that involves keeping your environment clean, because Atiku and Rufai are going to collaborate to come out with one voice in 2027. And it has been one conversation to another since Rufai joined as SDP. I think we've heard most from SDP since Rufai joined SDP, because every day you just get the conversation on SDP this, SDP that, and it's like it is so much going on in that particular area, especially when it has to do with 2027. It's like it's the main conversation. Is it that campaigns have started, or what are we to expect when it comes to 2027 election? The National Security Advisor NSA Malam Nuhu Ribadu yesterday warned against payment of ransom to terrorists, kidnappers, and other criminals. He gave the warning while receiving a fresh batch of over 60 rescued victims who had been in kidnappers' den for over a month, following intense military pressure in Kaduna. All right, with that headline, Rufai Oseni will be joining us to give us most of the headlines that are making the round. But when it comes to the aspect of paying ransom to kidnappers and all of that, you have your loved one in that you have not seen for a month or weeks, and this person, his life is being threatened consistently. It takes a lot for you not to be able to just shy away from the fact that, okay, I'm not going to pay ransom, whatever it is, I trust the security operatives. Now this is the responsibility of the security operatives or the security providers to be able to develop that trust in the people, help the people to trust them completely and solely. All right, we have Mr. Rufai Oseni join us this morning. Good morning, Mr. Rufai. And what are the stories making the rounds this morning?
All right, welcome to yet another exciting moment on the radio. I mean, the very first story making the round is about the death of businessman extraordinaire, that's Pascal Dozie, that passed yesterday at the age of 85. He had been ill for a while, and he passed. It was a very sad one. He was one of those that really helped with bringing telecoms to Nigeria by looking for 20% of the equity needed to start MTN Nigeria. And he did so much in the banking space with Diamond Bank that was later mopped up by Access Bank. You know, he also inspired a lot of people with his work at NESG and other areas of the country. I mean, and it just shows the kind of service and the kind of man he was. You know, lived a very long life at 85. Made a lot of impact. You know, scandal-free, innovative thinker. You know, a man that really gave to the next generation, and somebody I can call a very dear friend. So it's a very sad one. You know, we can just only pray for his family at a point in time like this, and pray for the repose of their souls.
So absolutely.
As regards the insecurity situation, I'd like to talk about that. Till today, we are still having a lot of bandit attacks like we had in Katsina. The question we would like to ask the government of the day is that what are they going to do as regards those who have been kidnapped in Katsina? How are they going to be able to bring them home? Because if we don't think of that, then we cannot move forward as a society. A society where we have constant bandit attacks and killings and all of that, it's a very sad one, for our country in general. So we also need to be able to build a country in such a way that we can avoid all of this colossal attack to the state of play of our economy and our country, and help our country, a great deal. Another point I would like to look at this morning, is that of the state of play of the Labour Party. I think it has to be said, people need to call Mr. Bure to order, because the judgment is clear. I mean, we've even had the audio of the judgment come out many times, and it's clear about the verdicts. So this idea of people sitting tight in power, when the judgment doesn't favor them, like what Bure is trying to do, really negates the course of play of everything. Now his attempts to now say he wants to, suspend Peter Obi and the likes at a time where clearly the judgment, does not favor him. And if a judgment does not favor you being a Supreme Court ruling, I think it's also good that the court should come out and take a position and make clarity apart from just giving the judgment, because people now use that lacuna to be able to go ahead and still parade themselves and act like the judgment favors them and do all sorts, which is not good, which is anti our democratic tenets. So it is a very sad one. And that's why this imbroglio is on in the Labour Party. Anyway, Peter Obi was speaking the other day in England, and he was talking about the fact that the way we can come out of all this Trump tariff situation is to be able to look inwards and see how we can produce like he's been saying. But for us to also produce, we must have that enabling business environment, which is lacking in the country.
Absolutely.
Because see, if we do not have that enabling business environment, which is lacking largely, then how do we want to succeed? How do we want to make progress? How do we want to change the course of history and the course of destiny? I mean, these are pertinent questions we need to be able to ask ourselves that we don't ponder on enough. These are pertinent questions that we need to be able to ask ourselves we don't talk about enough. We need to be able to improve the way businesses are done in the country and what goes out to businesses in the end. And also with this Trump tariff, the American government is now saying that ban that we've put on some items to support local production is counter trade. And I'm looking at the American government that you are taking the piece too much. After putting a 10% tariff, a 10% tax on all of the things you bring in, we bring in crude oil worth over $3 billion. You put a 10% tariff on that. After putting a 10% tariff on that, you're not saying that all the things we are blocking to be able to have local production here. You're saying otherwise. You're saying no, that we have to remove all of those ban and things of poultry and some other things that we normally have on America. The truth is, Our sectors are not as developed as those sectors in America.
Absolutely.
We don't have the capacity, we don't have the scale. So there must need to be a level of support for our own local sector. You know, it is only right, it's only fair, because when you look at the volume, there's also something called a capacity to be able to have a level of fairness when it comes to trade. And if you don't do that, no nation moves, no nation succeeds, no nation progresses. So these are the things we should look at strongly. And if we don't look at that, then we don't make any success. We don't make any headway.
Absolutely.
And we must be able to tackle all of these challenges and call a speed and say it the way it ought to be said.
All right. Thank you so much, Rufai Oseni, for joining us or giving us that quick piece this morning on headlines making the rounds this morning. And of course, we have other headlines pouring in. You can be a part of the conversation by joining us on YouTube, VOP 961 Abuja, or you can call, text, or send a WhatsApp message to the number 0808 312 8618 is the number for you to call and be a part of the conversation this morning. And of course, just like Rufai Oseni said, as Trump hikes some tariffs again, nervous businesses weigh what's to come next. And it's not just only a Nigerian thing. It even the American people in the American business sector, these are questions that they're asking. What policy or what rule or I'm sure I was watching a video, and he says he just wants to ask what thing is he going to bring up next, because these are very big questions that needs to be asked, because with Trump it's just like it's an unpredictable situation. Dominican Republic nightclub collapse and kills 98. It kills 98 people. That is a very heartbreaking one, and of course it has at least 98 killed and more than 150 injured after a roof collapsed at the nightclub in the Dominican Republic capital Santo Domingo. And officials have said a provincial governor and former Major League Baseball pitcher Octavio Dutel were among the victims. Dutel, 51, died on the way to the hospital after being pulled from the debris, and that is a very heartbreaking situation. The incident happened in the early hours of Tuesday at a concert by popular merengue singer Ruby Perez at the Jet Set nightclub. He was among those killed in the incident, as his manager said. And then Gaza is a killing field, says UN chief, as agencies urge world to act on Israel's blockade. As agencies urge world to act on Israel's blockade. And the UN Secretary General says aid has dried up and the floodgates of horror have reopened in the Gaza Strip, where Israel has blocked the entry of all goods and resumed the war against Hamas. And Gaza is a killing field and the civilians are in endless death loop, Antonio said on Tuesday. His comments come after the heads of 6 UN agencies appealed to world leaders to act urgently to ensure food and supplies reach Palestinians there. And Israel's foreign ministry insisted that there was enough food in Gaza and accused Guterres of spreading slander against Israel. And then Ukraine captures 2 Chinese nationals fighting for Russia. And then Iran wrote to Europe and why it's growing. There was a particular survey that was done, and so far the activities of drugs around the world has increased in the last 1 year by a 25%. And of course, when it comes to monitoring the issues of drugs and things that are not healthy for people, it is a very important factor that needs to be looked into. And not just cocaine. The UK is now a major the UK is now a major route for drug trafficking, especially cocaine. And of course there are a criminal drug gang in Ecuador. He was recruited by a corrupt counter-narcotics police officer to work for the Albanian mafia, one of Europe's most prolific cocaine trafficking networks, and the Albanian mafia has expanded its presence in Ecuador in recent years, drawn by key trafficking routes through the country, and it now controls much of the cocaine flow from South America to Europe. And despite Ecuador not producing, the smuggled into the country from neighboring Colombia and Peru, the world smuggled into the country from neighboring Colombia and Peru, the world's two largest producers of cocaine. And that is a report coming up. And then AI chip, not ice creams. Minister dig at Indian startups spark debate. And then, can the US return man deported to El Salvador? Immigration lawyer thinks so. And then Mendes brothers feel hope for parole after decades in jail. And then chemical bonds, assault and electric shock. Gazans tell BBC for torture in Israel's detention. All right, we have more headlines coming in this morning. All you have to do to be part of the conversation, call, text, or send a WhatsApp message to 0808 312 8618, or you can join us live on YouTube. VOP 961 Abuja is the handle for you to join. Drop your comments, and of course we are going to be looking at all of those. All right, we have more headlines coming in from bandits kill 2 and adult 60 in Zamfara in revenge for kingpins killings. Right now it's the cases of insecurity is it's on the high side, and we just hope that one day we just wake up and we're looking at the news and there is no situation of insecurity, this insecurity here, insecurity there. I'm sure we graduate we graduate officers every year, not just from the NDA or the police colleges and all of that, every single year. And the cases of improperly trained, and it is something that we trust and we believe the Nigerian military, and we just hope that this situation, because a Nigerian man's prayer will be, oh, let us just pray through this situation. But there are tactics, there are logics, and there are things, responsibilities that we can take, and it would bring a lower rate of insecurity in Nigeria. And then flood, federal government urges communities to be on alert. Just like we had said earlier in the show, it is very important for you to be very attentive. And if your house or you build on a waterway, please do well to evacuate and leave that environment. Or if you have your drainages clogged, or places that you need to take the dirt off, the raining season has started, so it is only right for you to prepare. And of course, it brings us to the conversation that the Director General of Nigeria Hydrological Service Agency, Umar Ibrahim Mohammed, disclosed this in a statement on Tuesday in Abuja. He said the Minister of Water Resources and Sanitation, Professor Joseph, would unveil the forecast, which include expected flood patterns and potential high-risk areas. And Mohammed said the forecast is aimed at helping stakeholders and communities to prepare and mitigate the impact of flooding in the country. And he said annual flood outlook is an essential tool used to inform and prepare stakeholders and communities in Nigeria for impending flood risk. And of course, the NIHASA boss said that the theme of this year is unveiling is flood resilience, focusing on communities' preparedness and adaptive strategies for flood management. And then we have more headlines coming this morning. It says oil price drop to affect road construction and social intervention. And then Action Aid, it says Amnesty International demand unconditional release of protesters, flay assault on journalists. And then alleged fraud, EFCC arraigns Bauchi Accountant General. The EFCC, of course, has arraigned the Bauchi State Accountant General And of course, it says in his application for bail, he argued that the charges against Jaja allegedly arose out of federal government determination to intimidate Governor Bala Mohammed of Bauchi State to drop his political ambition for 2027. He said the offense with which they are being charged with it was a bailable one, and he said the defendant were not being accused of any capital offense or act of terrorism that would have warranted their continued detention. That is another top burner conversation, and of course, all conversation or all political conversations right now are pointing fingers at 2027, and we just want to sit down, hope, and speculate the things that are going to be coming our way in 2027. And then we have the Borno State Governor Babagana Zulum has raised an alarm that the state seems to be losing ground to terrorists. He spoke on Tuesday at the Government House Maiduguri during an expanded Security Council meeting, which he noted was convened to hear the truth from major stakeholders, including traditional rulers and heads of security agencies in the state. And then bandits have launched a series of attacks on several communities in Safe LGA of Zamfara State, killing 2 people and abducting over 60 in what appears to be a retaliation for recent killings of some of their warlords by security operatives. And then we have a total of 11 governors of the People's Democratic Party have approached the Supreme Court challenging what powers President Bola Tinubu has to suspend a democratically elected structure of a state. The suit filed by the governors also challenges the declaration of a state of emergency rule in Rivers State. And then Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps has uncovered illegally connected valves used by suspected oil bunkers to siphon crude oil from a major pipeline in the creeks of Abia State. And according to NSCDC on its official Facebook page, the illegal connection was discovered during a routine surveillance operation in the area. And then President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and other eminent Nigerians, including the former President Olusegun Obasanjo and Labour Party presidential candidate in 2023 general election, Mr. Peter Obi, yesterday expressed